and welcome to the education edition of COVID on the Coast, capturing the story of what happened, how we're coping, and what's next. The aim of these discussions will be to share and document experiences, innovative solutions, and lessons learned among coastal stakeholders during the pandemic, this historic moment in time. In sharing these stories and insights, we hope to provide inspiration to coastal peers, helping them address adversity moving forward. My name is Circe Gonzalez, and I am the Coastal Training Program Coordinator at Chesapeake Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, Virginia. The Coastal Training Program is dedicated to working with wave makers, like those in today's discussion, to foster science-based and community-supported resource management and socio-ecological system resilience, which we accomplish through stakeholder engagement, facilitated collaboration, and opportunities like this. For those of you unfamiliar with Chesapeake Bay near Virginia, we are part of a system of 29 estuarine sites around the country, born out of the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972. Each represents a partnership between NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and a state. Our immediate state partner is the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, fondly known as VIMS. As a National Estuarine Research Reserve, we have a mandate to conduct research and stewardship, to empower communities through education, and to empower coastal decision makers through training and advisory service. This discussion will spotlight some of our partners in education who have been working hard to bring safe programming to the region in these COVID times. It's only fitting then that our Chesapeake Bay near Virginia Education Coordinator, Sarah Nuss, moderates this discussion. Welcome, Sarah, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Circe. Thank you for having me.
All right. Sarah Nuss has been the Education Coordinator at Chesapeake Bay near Virginia since 2005. In addition to pursuing a PhD in curriculum learning design, Sarah develops education, interpretation, and outreach programs for a range of audiences, including field-based programs for K-12 students and teachers. One of Sarah's current areas of interest is professional development for graduate students and pre-service teachers. All right, Sarah, so this is where I hand it over to you to get us started with some questions. Okay. Or introduce our panel.
All right, well, thank you again for having me as moderator and also for putting this discussion together. I feel like I'm hanging out with my friends, which is really nice. So we're here to talk about COVID on the coast and how it relates to education. Of course, there's a lot of uncertainty right now regarding education due to COVID. I think it's thrown all of us for a loop that we were not expecting. And even our local schools are still making decisions about how students will be starting school and how they'll be learning in a formal environment in the fall. So while most of us work with informal audiences or through informal education, and while environmental education could provide a safer alternative to some indoor education settings, we're also in a world where field experiences are being cut in budgets. And we're seeing a disturbing trend of some nonprofits that are having financial trouble due to lack of programming in the spring and in the summer and looking forward into the fall. So today, we're really looking to move forward. And we want to think creatively about how environmental education can continue to impact students in our region. We know that these programs have value. They're having an impact on the students and the teachers that we work with. But we just may have to rethink how we're doing all of our work in order to keep our participants safe and our staff safe. So we have put together a great panel of educators and a great list of questions. So we're going to have a nice discussion today about COVID on the coast and its impact on education. So we'll have each panelist introduce themselves briefly, and also if you could address how you and your organization have been impacted by COVID thus far.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Clark, and I'm the School and Youth Program Specialist at the Virginia Aquarium and Marine Science Center here in Virginia Beach. So my role here is to work with all school age, youth age children in a variety of programs. So for coming to the aquarium for field trips, us going out to the schools to provide hands-on instructions, even working with their teachers to do trainings and create resource kits. And we also work with youth with overnights, scout programs, summer camps, and birthday parties. So I think obviously one of the big impacts for us, both as an aquarium as a whole, and of course in our education section, is just being closed for several months during the height of our kind of attendance for school groups. So March through June is when we see the majority of our students for field trips. So between that and programs to the schools, we saw about a third, if not almost a half of our attendance drop. And of course, while we were closed, we definitely had to kind of switch gears and think about how we could engage audiences in a different way. And I think one of the biggest changes for us is that we didn't have a virtual presence before COVID started. So it was kind of a learn on the fly type of scenario. So it's been really great to be able to learn and figure that all out, but also it's been very challenging to figure that out.
Hey everybody, my name's Nat Draper. I'm with the James River Association. I'm the education manager. I've been with the James River Association for about, I'm going on my 6th year. And before that, I was a high school teacher for 17 years in Henrico County. So with the James River Association, when March came around, we did have to cancel all of our programs. Obviously, there was a lot of unknowns with COVID-19. You know, I remember, you know, should we wear a mask? Should we not wear a mask? You know, that was a big debate in the beginning. You know, how easy, you know, is it to transfer, you know, the virus from one person to the other? So I feel like we know a lot more now here that we are in August compared to March. But we did have to cancel our programs. Just like Rachel, we created a whole part of our website called Virtual Classroom. You know, that didn't exist in March. And now I think we have like 14 lessons on there, including videos and curriculum where parents can print out, you know, kind of like a worksheet that goes along with some curriculum, and the students can fill it out. And there's like even keys for teachers and parents to look at later on. We also partnered with a school system to make hands-on videos. So we went onto our pontoon boat, and the Henrico County Public Schools brought a video crew, and we had microphones, and we filmed a 15-minute video of us holding fish and talking about fish adaptations, doing water quality testing on the boat. And that was actually used in a 2-week session called EdFlix, kind of their Netflix, but they call it EdFlix. And so I think over 6,000 4th and 5th graders saw that video, and they had to do a worksheet that kind of went along with the video, you know, some curriculum. And then this summer, we've just started to do really small groups of outdoor education, and that has gone very well. We have a safety manager here at James River Association, and we wrote guidelines to follow. We educated our educators on how to, you know, work with students with the COVID virus as well. And so that has gone well, and we're wrapping up our summer programming in the next 2 weeks. So.
My name is John Gresham. I am the Education Support Specialist at York River State Park. And my role is to coordinate and help conduct the education programs here at the park. In particular, our field trips, public schools, private schools, homeschool groups, and we also have weekend interpretive programs as well. Thanks to COVID, I'm going to say it in a minute, our field trips, just like everybody else, have been pretty much decimated. We have not had any programs at the park until I would say about the middle of July, the end of July going into August. And even with the programs that we have, there is a very strict limitation according to the Department of Conservation and Recreation, in which our park is affiliated with. Also, we have done some video work. I had submitted, I think, 4 videos to DCR, Virginia State Parks, and that the videos that we shoot, along with the videos shot by other state parks, are through DCR. You would have to go through the Virginia State Parks website. But I was able to contact Williamsburg families and to submit some videos to them as well. So the word is getting out that yes, we are doing some Saturday programs with limitations, and where we would allow people to just come on some of our hikes without even a reservation. Now they must have a reservation. And we have pretty much saddened a lot of people by not having our paddling programs anymore, because we would have to clean every boat away from the water, of course, because we don't want any contamination to go into the creek and then to the river. So it's been a challenge for us, a lot of limitations.
Hi, I'm Shireen Hughes. I'm Assistant Director of Wetlands Watch. It's a nonprofit based in Norfolk, Virginia, and we're focused on protecting wetlands, but also how do we adapt and become more resilient to sea level rise, because we're concerned about the loss of tidal wetlands with sea level rise. And we work with university students. We bring them to Hampton Roads and have them meet up with communities that are suffering from excess flooding or too much stormwater or maybe shoreline erosion, and we help the students apply their learning in a real life situation. The other thing I'm involved in is the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Certification Program, and unlike the other panelists, my focus is mainly workforce development. So we may work with high school students, but it's more university and professionals, and we're upskilling professionals to know how to properly design, install, and maintain green infrastructure or nature-based stormwater practices and living shorelines. And our secret sauce for our training is the hands-on experience and interactive experience. And so I'm going to actually just focus on what we've done for that program today. And what we have, so our previous trainings, we have different levels of trainings. We have one day, at least one day in a classroom where we do interactive group breakout sessions. And we have hands-on things like testing soils. And then we have another second day that's all outside. And so what we've done is, well, the first thing was we had to postpone all of our planned spring trainings. Spring is typically a slow time. We typically do workshops because we work with people that are busy that time of year. So it gave us a little bit of breathing room. We were used to using Zoom. We were used to home-based offices, so that was okay. But we all had to learn how to develop videos, what kind of equipment we need. We weren't sure whether we wanted to go online, because of the value of our training program has been the interaction and the personal connections that people make. So we had to really think about that. So the first thing we did was we converted our exam to online, because we had done a lot of trainings in the winter time, and there were a lot of people that needed to take the exam to get our certification. And then we said, okay, now we got to educate ourselves about how we can provide a valuable, meaningful experience online, and can we do a hybrid type of experience. So we've converted our level 1 training to a flipped classroom in some ways, where we have people do preparatory, watch videos and do some activities, and then they show up, and we have small, short presentations more opportunity for people to ask questions. We break out into small breakout sessions. We run it through Zoom. We just finished our first session, and we haven't done our field day yet, but we have distributed them throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And so there are more local opportunities. People don't have to travel. Our traders don't have to travel. And we're going to do those in small groups.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bethany Smith, and I'm a K-12 educator with Chesapeake Bay Governor's School. I've spent the last 11 years teaching 10th, 11th, and 12th graders marine and environmental science. Our Governor's School services the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula regions of Virginia. We service 14 different school divisions in the area. Students take advanced math and science courses from us, and they are all dual enrollment level courses, so the students are earning college credit for the courses that they take from us. Additionally, I serve as a co-coordinator of the Marine Science Legacy Program, which is the education and outreach arm of the Urbana Oyster Festival, which is the state official oyster festival. So sort of formal and informal education going on there. I'll talk mostly about K-12 since we've got a bunch of informal educators in the group, but really it was such an abrupt end to our school year in a way that we've never experienced before. You know, one day we were in the classroom with students and then the school year was over. There was no transition, there was no closure. So it was very abrupt, and it was a very abrupt transition to an online learning model. Our service region is very rural, and so a lot of our students don't have access to high quality internet that they would need to get online and do learning modules or participate in lectures. A lot of them don't have devices. So we were really scrambling right at the initial closure to get devices and internet access into the hands of a lot of our students so that they could participate. Because we are granting college credit for our courses, we had to continue teaching them. That was sort of the agreement that was made with Rappahannock Community College, which grants the credits for our courses. And so we couldn't really just sort of put it in this mode of like maintenance and let's sort of just review things we've been doing for the year. And I know that's what a lot of school divisions were forced to do in the situation, but we were unable to because those were college credit bearing courses. So we had to teach, we had to address new content, we had to assess learning, and all of that was really complicated by kids not having internet, kids having to drive and sit in a McDonald's parking lot with their laptop in their car just to be able to access high enough speed internet to participate in courses. I will say the vast majority of my students worked so hard and made it happen, and they were willing to do it and really dedicated to their education, which is exciting as a teacher to be able to see. So as a teacher, it was really hard to all of a sudden just one day you're in the classroom and the next day you're having to do something completely virtual. I have little children at home, and so teaching a synchronous model just was not going to work for me because I have lots of little distractions running around. So I think each of us as an educator had to sort of figure out what model was going to work best for us to be able to continue offering a high level college credit worthy level of instruction to our students that was going to work for our lives. And so what I ended up doing was creating a lot of modules that my students were able to access as they were able. They had, a length of time to be able to finish the different things in those modules. And it was sort of that flipped classroom model where they had videos or things they had to watch to get sort of the basic understanding of the learning. And then I tried to do as much hands-on and virtual things for the application of that learning. That's one of my big passions in education is the application of that learning, and how can students see how the things that they learn, these little facts, are going to be applicable in their daily lives. And so continuing to keep that at the forefront of my teaching, moving forward was really important for me. And I think my students as a whole were still able to benefit from having access to a lot of online and virtual things. So I appreciate all of the informal educators putting that stuff out there for us, because it did make a really, really hard task, at least a little easier to be able to go and grab a lot of those resources and sort of package them together for students. You know, coming up here this fall, I will not be in the classroom. I'm making a career change, but I know that my coworkers are hard at work developing ways to still reach our students. With 14 participating school divisions, there are a lot of different schedules. There are some schools that are totally virtual, some schools that are hybrid options. So trying to balance all of those different schedules and figure out what our schedule is for students is proving to be quite difficult. Our school also follows a 2/3, 1/3 model where we try to have at least a third of our instruction time in the field. Usually our field season is September and October. So there's some plans in place to try and get kids in the field in small groups and to be able to access some field resources in meaningful ways. There's also some plans to create sort of almost like nature trail sort of things where the kids can go out with their families and do it on their own, and then, you know, come together as sort of a culminating class discussion or whatever in the classroom or on a virtual platform. So those things are in the works. Like I said, I will not be a part of them, but I know that there's a lot of creative things happening by our fantastic educators to be able to really still try and have meaningful experiences for those students and honor sort of the tradition of what our school is all about.
I think I heard from all of you about flexibility, that everyone had to be flexible and change what they were doing, that they weren't planning for this. So I'm going to throw this one to Rachel, but where has flexibility been most needed to keep your institution afloat during this time?
I think for us, we had to really just be able to change on the fly. So we had to completely revamp how we bring people into the aquarium. So we had to do online ticketing. We had to create a one-way flow. We had to get rid of things that were high touch things. And so I think just being able to think outside the box, not think about how we always used to do something, and just being able to adapt. So within the first week of us opening to the public, you know, we changed our process like 3 different times, and it's working great. And a lot of the things that we're doing now, we're like, we're going to keep this post-COVID because this actually just works better from if you're coming here in the summer, you know, it's usually busy. This has just made it a little bit more pleasant for everybody. I think from the education side, where I'm trying to create content and materials for students and youth, I think being flexible is just diving in. You do not have to know how everything works for it to be successful. I never really used the virtual platforms as a leader presenter. I've always joined them. So I just, you know, stopped worrying about not knowing what to do and just started doing it. And now everybody's like, oh, you're the expert. Okay, can you help us? And I'm like, I'm not, but okay. So I think just taking out that feeling of having to know what to do.
I'm wondering if anyone else has any lessons learned that they're like, oh, we're going to do this from now on. I know for us, I mean, some of our programs we've moved to virtual. Some I will probably want to move back. They would work better as a hands-on program, but some, I mean, we're able to reach teachers across the whole state versus teachers that are only in our few surrounding counties. So has anybody learned anything? I see Nat's going off mute, that they think, oh, we're going to keep this up even after we're back to normal.
We have brought all of our trainers to the online platform so that as we don't have one person presenting for a half an hour or 45 minutes. It's short, quick, and different personalities coming on, and each of them has their own expertise, and we set them up to present the part that we think they were best at. And they don't have to travel, so it costs less in some ways, even though we have them all there at the same time. And people can come from, you know, we've actually seen all of our sessions filled up. We actually opened up another session. And now that we have this format, it's easy to repeat and offer more sessions rather than, it's easier to get people there to do it. The disadvantage is that it's a population of people that haven't had a lot of experience with screens doing Zoom. And so what we saw with the first class was people weren't comfortable in a big group of 30, but when we used the breakout sessions, people came to life and got more comfortable. And so I would say the breakout sessions are a thing to add, which we already had in our in-person training, and we found a lot of value to that. But they even work online too. And so I think we'll probably save this as an option. It's still preferable to have it in person, I think, but we can save it as an option, and it can allow us to continue to do business and bring it financially support our organization so that it doesn't shut down.
John, I'm curious if any of the adaptations you guys have done at the park have improved upon prior processes, or if there's any opportunities that have surfaced that's like a silver lining that you guys might continue in the future too.
One thing that we have seen is an increase of first-time visitors to the park. After all, people who have been cooped up in their houses and they want to get outside, they want to do something. And one thing we've been able to do was to give these point duty programs where we would just be at one location, like let's say behind the visitor center. There is our osprey nesting platform. And most people who come to our park, they just want to go to Fossil Beach. You know, that's the only thing they're looking for. But if there's somebody at strategic locations like Woodstock Pond, where we have our heron nesting colony, again, behind the visitor center where we have the osprey nesting platform, we're able to give people chunks of information, not, you know, killing them with information, but just give them a good piece of knowledge about the ecosystem instead of just walking past the osprey nest and say, oh, look, there's a bird. What? No, it's more than just a bird. This is the best fishing raptor that we have. So we're able to develop, I would say, small bite-sized programs to visitors who ordinarily wouldn't even go to parks. And with those small programs, that plants a seed in their heads. They're thinking, well, maybe next time I should sign up or register for one of the longer programs. We've had a couple of people who had just stopped past the osprey nesting platform, where I'm sitting there with a pair of binoculars explaining to them about the osprey, saying, well, we want to go on your stream to see Stroll. And that's a hike going to 4 different aquatic locations where I explain the ecosystems, what can be found in the waters and what can be found around the waters. So we're planting seeds. That's a good thing. And through Williamsburg Families, we've had some people say, oh, look, there's the guy that did the video. Let's sign up for his program. So it's a seed planting process. Right now, we're limited to how much more we can do, but hopefully after COVID-19 is over, we're going to have more people to sign up for our interpretive programs and get our public school people back, our private school and our homeschool people back as well.
Yeah, great. I actually heard several times that the park was at capacity. I think so. I definitely think people were taking advantage of that outdoor space. So that's great.
Yeah, over capacity in some instances.
I wanted to maybe pass this one to Nat, but you mentioned you have a safety officer at your organization, which some places may or may not have that. What did you feel like your organization had prepared for ahead of this? Did having a safety officer help, or were there other things in place that helped you prepare, even though none of us were expecting it, but just to be a little bit more prepared than maybe others?
For the last 3 years, the James River Association has grown, and we've had a lot more equipment. So the title is Fleet Facilities and Safety Manager. And Alyssa is her name. And Alyssa has a lot of experience. She, so basically we hired her at this position, I want to say like 6 months before COVID came out. And she's been wonderful. She's been communicating with me about the CDC guidelines and what the state's coming up with. And, we created a document of what we're going to follow when we do interact with students, and, social distancing, when should we be wearing masks, when we should be wiping stuff down. Things like if we are doing a program this summer and it's 100 degrees out and kids all have water bottles, only one person should be filling up the water bottles, not 20 different hands touching it. Things like that. Obviously, we haven't been doing any students in vans, because you really can't social distance in a van, in my opinion. So parents have had to drive different locations to work with us. I think that's been a little bit of an inconvenience, but I will tell you, it's been great to have her. We run a program called the James River Expedition with high school students. And one of the things we did to make sure parents were okay was had a Zoom meeting and had all the parents and the students on the meeting so they could ask us questions on how we're going to handle certain situations. And I think that was a key. Communication is so important with this stuff, and we want to make sure people feel comfortable, and then they can have that information to make the decision. All right, I want my son or daughter involved, or I don't. And that's where we have to do the absolute best we can. And so that, I guess that's kind of the answer to your question.
Another thing, and I'll just throw this out to anybody, but it seems like obviously we're all using technology more than we were in the past, at least for teaching, and creating videos, engaging videos, whether that's a virtual field trip or a Zoom meeting or something, is really key to keeping students interested in what we're trying to teach them. So I'm just wondering how you all dealt with that possible learning curve of figuring out how to create videos, how to make them engaging. Did you attend trainings? Are you training all of your staff a certain way? Like, how are you guys moving forward with that aspect of it?
Wetlands Watch was actually lucky because we hired a young woman right before COVID hit, and she started during COVID, and one of her last classes was how to design and develop videos. Which is like, I was just so thankful for that, because I was really not looking forward to it. And she and another younger Wetlands Watch staff member helped walk me through how to do a video. And I was the one in front of the camera, which was uncomfortable for me. But I've shared that experience and what I learned from her with James River Association, with the Alliance, with all the different partners that I work with, because we're all struggling to do the same thing. So we all kind of talked about, what kind of equipment do you need? What kind of software do you need? And we've all been supporting one another. We've also shared, like a whole bunch of people shared with Emily from James River Association here in Williamsburg, what their COVID restrictions or COVID safety precautions were. And then she used what they had, JRA had, and then put together one for volunteers, because we have some volunteer type workshops coming up. So sharing was great. And then actually having somebody in-house was amazing for me, because it was hard. And then just understanding that attention spans are short, and that videos should be short, not long. you know, that you're not going to be engaging people if it's too long and drawn out. So
we're in the age of TikTok and Snapchat and limits on videos. We created a 15-minute video, and it was set up so the kids had to watch the whole entire video in order to kind of do curriculum that was associated with it. But we also had some of my educators do 30-second or 60-second videos that led into a lesson. Like, we call this thing wetlands in a bottle. And so if you go to our website, they can do this wetlands in a bottle activity, and there's a 1 minute to a 90-second video of instructing on how to do it. So that's another example. I agree with Shireen on that.
Rachel, you said that you did not have a virtual presence before COVID. So how did you guys tackle that from the beginning?
We had never really offered any kind of virtual programming before. So the first thing that they kind of wanted us to do was to have stuff that was free and available, and kind of pointed to a lot of facilities, other aquariums, zoos that already had that established. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot of work, but all right, let's start. So we started by just creating a community resources page that included lesson plans and activities that parents could do with their kids could do on their own, or eventually teachers could do with their students. We started working with our marketing team to try to put together short, couple-minute lessons that we could upload onto our YouTube channel. And we quickly kind of ran into issues where they were trying to do content for the aquarium. So asking them to help us create stuff wasn't really feasible. So we did partner a little bit with the city's media's communication area. They came out and did a couple of videos for us. But we kind of found ourselves in the last month or so just like, okay, we're stuck again. What do we do? How do we do this? And I was kind of fortunate enough to just have been required to create a video for my graduate course. And it turned out a lot better than I expected. And I felt like, I think I just had in my head that this was a really complicated process, but technology has improved so much. You really can use your cell phone to get footage. And there's a lot of really great software applications to use to put a video together that looks really quality. And so we have started tackling that ourselves. So we've kind of just said, you know what, we're not waiting for you guys anymore in marketing. We're just going to do it ourselves. And so we're creating stuff right now, and it's going really well.
Another question that I think comes up a lot with the transition to digital learning is issues of equity. And I think Bethany kind of touched on that, being in a rural area where students might not have access to Wi-Fi or computers. Is anybody addressing that in a creative way? I mean, we're doing kind of similar things to what Rachel's doing, putting things up for families to do together, putting things up for teachers to give to their students. We did try one time to do a packet that people could pick up, or that we mailed to them, because we were going to have people pick them up, but we realized the public could not come to our campus yet. So I was just curious how that is changing some of your priorities of your organization, thinking about that equity component.
we had some people that were struggling with our exams. And so we allowed them to have somebody in the room with them taking the exam online that they could ask questions of and, answer verbally to help them, to manage some of their disabilities or nervousness or anxiety or whatever, because not everybody's comfortable taking tests online, or taking tests, period. So we have actually been struggling with that all along, and we've been trying to figure out ways to deal with it. And we're not educators by profession. My background is an environmental person. So we have partners that are educators that have been helping us as well. But I would say I think that there's just some people that won't learn well online, and how can you create some small group in-person opportunities if necessary to accommodate that, whether it's inability to access the technology or its inability to learn through technology.
So for this 2020-2021 school year, we have a large grant with an urban school system. I know the school system hasn't had laptops on a one-to-one basis, and internet at home has been a problem. And I'm going to tell you, I'm concerned. Here we are going to start in 4 weeks, and I don't know. We have these virtual lessons now that we're writing for the grant. We're going to we moved it was a field trip component to a sewage treatment plant that's going to be moved from October, November to March and April to do those trips. And we're going to, cross our fingers that that works. But in the fall, we're doing virtual learning with stormwater maps and elevations and, pollutants coming off parking lots at their schools. So we're mapping out the 7 high schools now to do stormwater. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to virtually send the information to them. And will they be able to get it and edit it? Because I'm working with their science coordinator, and he's working really hard too, but he doesn't necessarily know. And so I think that's the unknown. I think is stressful, and we're going to try to solve problems on the fly. But I do worry that a percentage of the population won't be able to access it, and that upsets me a little bit.
Bethany, I was going to ask you, do you feel like your area has made any plans for the fall semester that would help mitigate some of those issues?
Our public school system has plans in place to do that. I've seen a lot of commentary from parents on a lot of, social media websites saying, I called the one internet company in our area, and it's going to cost some multiple thousands of dollars to run a line down my road. Like, I can't afford that. So the school system has some plans in place to provide hotspots for students and for families who do not have internet access at their homes. I was just watching actually the elementary school plan last night, because my daughter is going. And they're providing one-to-one devices for the kids. And it's not even a sign up. It's like, here's your device. You're going to use it at school. Then you're going to take it home and do your virtual work on it at home. So it's a very small school system. I think they are much better situated to handle some of these issues than perhaps a larger school division. But I'm relatively pleased, at least, in my own personal experience with that. And I think as far as governor's school goes, my experience right at the closure, I felt like we really did a good job equipping kids. We were just passing out laptops like crazy. We didn't need them in the classroom anymore. So here, take one, take it home and use it. We were able to get some hotspots for kids that had significant barriers to getting internet access. But like I said, a lot of mine hopped in their car and drove to sit in the public library parking lot or the McDonald's parking lot. Thankfully, a lot of the businesses in this area were able to extend their Wi-Fi into their parking lots. And that made a big, big difference for a lot of these students to have access. The community colleges extended their Wi-Fi into the parking lot, just so that kids were able to try and overcome some of those access issues. So it really has been a group effort. I think one of the other things in terms of equity that this has really exposed is that schools and education in general provide so many more services than just sitting in the classroom and doing classroom learning all day. And that's become so much more evident during this time. And how do we address all of those things which are sort of lacking or are hurdles to overcome at this time?
In our district, they were providing meals and providing Wi-Fi hotspots all over town and stuff. And we're going to one-to-one technology as well, even for the kindergartners, which will be interesting. So a few of you have mentioned grants, finances, so I want to get to that. Some of you, maybe like myself, have grants that you had written and planned a whole different thing and now are having to change your plan, or maybe you're having to write more grants now because you're trying to offset some of the loss of not having programming in the spring and fall. So does anybody have any thoughts on how grants is looking different, or if your organization's approach to grants has changed during this?
I typically get a fairly good sized grant every year to fund education outreach things for Urbana Oyster Festival. And so we're trying to come up with some creative ways. We usually have a big education day where we bring students from the area together, and it's massive. I mean, it's over 200 students together doing hands-on learning all about Chesapeake Bay things. The Oyster Festival is canceled in its traditional in-person format this year, which also means our education things are as well. But we have some good ideas for how we can take those grant funds and still turn them into really useful educational materials for our local teachers. So to still provide the flavor of what Education Day would be like, and utilize the exhibitors and the informal educators that we typically have for Education Day to provide those materials or help us synthesize a lot of those materials. So I think we're just sort of turning our grant funds from funding in-person things to funding a lot of our virtual experiences, and so still being able to use those funds, but maybe at least hopefully meet the needs of local teachers where they are right now.
And it seems, at least from my end, that the granting agencies have been very flexible in allowing for those changes. Nat, did you have something to add?
Communication is super important with this too. If you have, if you've done these grants with, a lot of our grants we do with the same foundations, Chesapeake Bay Trust, NOAA, BWET. And if you have a relationship, you just got to call them, and I think, and explain, they understand we're in really trying times, and I think you have to come up with a plan that is achievable. If you come up with a plan that is not achievable, then I think that's where you could potentially get some people upset, but if you try to come up with a plan that say, listen, we're going to do this in smaller groups, or we're going to try to do this virtually, and if this doesn't work virtually, then we're going to think of another way to do it, and this is how it will look. I think that really helps guide you and your team. I can't do all the stuff. I have a great 8-person education team, and I need them to be on board too. So I think communication on both ends with your team and also with the funders is super important.
We actually were trying to move towards, for the CBLP, we're trying to move towards predominantly financed by registration fees, but we've lost about a third of the people that would normally go through our training. Local government staff can't participate. And we had a number of grants that were multi-year grants. And so that has been very helpful. If you're on a year-to-year grant, then it would be hard to repurpose the funds. But I just got finished rewriting a scope of work and repurposing some of the funding to be more reflective of our response to COVID restrictions and disruptions. And then we also found that a lot of people started coming to us asking us to develop training programs for them around a specific topic. So with James River Association around living shorelines and around buffers. And there's a huge interest right now and funding available for those because of the regulatory environment. And so we adapted to thinking, well, that's how we're going to make it through this time, is we aren't going to charge for these trainings, we aren't going to charge the attendees for the trainings. People are going to pay us to develop the trainings, and they have the grant funding to do that. And so it will allow some people to attend that couldn't attend prior to that because they don't have the funds anymore. and it'll pay for us to continue moving forward and continue working. And we also did apply for through the CARES Act for the 2 staff that are staffing CBLP, and that helped too. So
it's an interesting time when a lot of conferences even are going virtual, and some are waiving registration fees or making them very inexpensive, which is great and allows us all to attend, you know, professional development, but also kind of puts those organizations in a bit of danger because they're not making any money off of those events either. So I'm wondering, now that we're kind of solidly in the situation, you know, it's not as new anymore, we're all making our accommodations. What role does resilience planning play in your organization's response to this? So are you thinking long-term, you know, if this goes on 6 more months, this is what we're going to do. If this goes on 1 year, this is what we're going to need to do. Is that part of your planning, or is everyone just trying to make it through, you know, the current month and figure it out because it's all very uncertain?
we just think that we have to be prepared for long term. And when we took the time to revisit our curriculum for our trainings and our content and how we're delivering it, we were very deliberate and thoughtful about it, and felt like this is a resilient strategy. It can keep us functioning, and we can continue to provide the service that we've, you know, of quality training. It'll be different, but it'll be, I think we can continue. So yes. And I'm, like I said before, if you have funding that's for multiple years, so into the end of 2021, then that helps as well. You have to think about what is your funding stream as well. So
it's really hard to plan long term right now, because I think 2 weeks ago I had a plan on how we were going to do some fall education, and that changed. And then you know, I start planning again and it changes again. And so I think, like, right now I'm planning on the next 6 months. And I do think, you know, I think you heard me earlier, I'm hoping that, you know, in February we're going to be able to actually get kids on field trips. That's my thought. But probably in a month or so, you know, not right now, but I'm going to start thinking, like, if we can't do that, what are we going to do next? One strategy I wanted to chat with you about that a bunch of Richmond nonprofits are doing are something called virtual learning centers, where we are helping offer the virtual learning to parents that both work. So if both parents have a job, they cannot be home with their kids, or teachers. I called a school system yesterday and said, you know, what are you going to do with your teachers that have to be teaching at the school and they have kids that need to be somewhere doing virtual learning? They have a 4th grader. So I talked to a school system in the Hampton Roads area about coming to our ecology school and doing virtual learning. And then when the virtual learning's done, we'll be doing outdoor programming with them. Now, it only can probably be a group of 8 to 10 kids. It's going to have to be small. I mean, we usually handle 40 kids, but with social distancing and the internet access, we don't have that in there. So, but that's an idea that we're trying to run with. An organization here called CBNERR-VA is doing something very similar. I have to admit, I got the idea from them. It wasn't my idea. So, but that's something we're looking into. In Richmond, and in other areas, they're talking about parents are putting kids together in 8 to 10. What are they calling them?
Like pods or something.
Pods. Yeah, and you know, what a better place. I mean, so when the kids are doing 5 to 6 hours of you know, virtual learning, at least they're going to get 2 to 3 hours of outdoor education with a nonprofit. And the parents have time to complete their work and they're not under pressure of kind of do both. I think it's a big benefit for a lot of parents, and I think we can offer something safe if you really think it through.
So I want to push a question to Bethany, the $1 million question that we're all trying to figure out right now. What can we as informal educators offer to support teachers during this time of virtual learning? And I know that, I mean, I've talked to teachers doing my own kind of informal surveys. They don't really know what the situation's going to be like. So there's a lot of unknowns still, but you know, is it things for kids to do outside? Is it online simulations? Is it virtual field trips? Is it lesson plans? I mean, there's so many things to offer, and I think a lot of us are just like, we don't know where to start to be the most helpful.
I think it varies by grade level. Certainly things that will work for elementary school students aren't going to work in the same way for high school students. My high school students were quite adept at being able to navigate electronic learning and do all of those things and log in. And a lot of them were doing synchronous learning where they're over Zoom and their teacher was teaching a class and sharing a screen and they were, you know, right along with them, like they didn't really miss a beat. But we know that that does not work for our younger students, and that's a lot harder. And it's almost maybe a harder mountain to climb for those elementary school teachers who are having to figure out ways to continue to keep kids engaged. So one of the big things I've sort of been seeing on a lot of the marine science education social media channels that I've been following is just teachers wanting to figure out how to convert their curriculum to virtual. And I've seen a lot of teachers sort of working together to tackle it. Ones that are using the same textbook or similar textbooks saying, you know, I'll take this chapter, you take that chapter, and we'll swap materials to just build sort of these virtual units or content modules on specific things where there is that education piece where, you know, the basic learning is presented. And then there's the applications that sort of stem out from there. I think the hardest thing is that hands-on and labs, and you know, that's a big piece for students that they're going to miss. So I see a lot of teachers struggling with how they're going to do labs, especially if the school division is completely virtual. We've talked a lot about having outdoor experiences that if we can't get the kids together in small groups to do, having them do on their own. You know, we are fortunate to live in a region that's full of lots of cool places for kids to explore that are close to home, even a lot of them in their backyards, so, or their grandparents' backyards, you know, somewhere that they have accessible to them. So creating sort of these outdoor adventures that kids can go do either on their own or with their families, which, you know, can loop in some of our partners at like the state parks and other places like that. To sort of create this content where kids and families can get out. It gives them a chance to get out of the house, but they're also doing school. They're learning in a hands-on way that they might not really know they're learning, but then the teachers can then facilitate that learning. And so one of the things we like to do at Governor School is we will, when we can take the kids out in the field, we do all the data collection. And then, you know, the kids have fun chasing fiddler crabs and grabbing, you know, marsh mud and throwing at each other and all those things. That's fun, but it's meaningful. And they collect the data, but they don't really know why or what for. And then we get together and analyze a lot of that in the classroom, and that can be done online. So if we can still sort of turn the kids into little data collectors in a lot of these activities, I think it's a great way to sort of leverage getting them outside, having them still do hands-on things, having them still be exposed to science, letting them be scientists. And then sort of the teacher being able to facilitate, make that data meaningful in some way. And that's something that kids can do elementary through high school. It just needs to be adapted. So I think, you know, creating those sorts of learning pieces or helping teachers create those sorts of learning pieces is really important. You know, no teacher wants to just sit and have kids in front of a computer. That's not anybody's goal. It's not school. It's certainly not enjoyable. So I think that teachers are really hungry to have a lot of those sorts of things. And it's not necessarily something that teachers have ever been trained to do. They have the skill set. I just think they haven't really had to jump in that way. And this is sort of forcing them through a lot of ways. So I think one of the biggest ways you can support those teachers is by creating opportunities for those sorts of activities or for those sorts of little curriculum modules that then they can pick and choose what's going to work best for them and for their classrooms. And so I sort of envision it in my job as Oyster Festival education coordinator as like this menu of options or choices that we can provide to local school system and say, you know, here's the SOLs that this addresses, here's the content areas that this addresses, and here's all the resources you pick. It's all right here for you. Then you can sort of craft what's going to work for your grade and your students and the kids that live in your area. If you have lots of great internet access, there's tons and tons of videos and things. But if you don't have great internet access, you know, here's non sort of technology required things that are so cool that you can have kids do. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different angles to attack it from, and everybody sort of has a piece or a way they can attack it.
You know, as a person who taught for 17 years in a school, I just want to make sure that kids see school as, you know, fun and interactive. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges we face these next couple months. And the principals, the principal I talked to yesterday, he's even seeing some parents taking a gap year and repeating the school year. You know, there's just lots of unknowns still. You know, how are we going to do this? How are we going to know that kids are actually really learning? Obviously, there can be online assessments and stuff like that, but we just got to think that stuff through. It's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be harder than we think.
I just keep reiterating that we can't force anything out there. It's just, we just have to keep talking to teachers and our audiences and seeing how we can be the most helpful to them, because they're trying to figure it out, not knowing if some of them don't even know if they're going to be in person or not. So I think that's been really important for us. Not only our teachers and our students, but also our informal educators. This was not their chosen area to work in either. And so how to support them in this transition of being in front of a computer all day is also something that we have to give some time to. So the virus has taken a toll on everybody. So we're all stuck at home. We're not socializing as much. It might have a toll on us mentally or even economically. And so I'm interested what everyone is doing to recharge and take care of themselves during this time. A lot of us spend most of their time outside normally, and now we're not. And so what is everyone doing to practice self-care for themselves during this time?
So I think for me, I really enjoy walking my dog because it benefits me, but it also makes it so he's not crazy. So I've actually tried to sign up for lots of virtual 5Ks so then I can choose where I go. And we've gotten the little guy up to 5 miles in one stretch, which is great because he's little. So just trying to find new places to explore, new places that we haven't been before. And so that's been really great. Unfortunately, this summer we've had to do it at like 5 a.m. because otherwise it's just too hot to be outside.
My wife is a really good tennis player, and we have decided to play tennis every Wednesday night. And so actually we call it date night Wednesday tennis. And we had probably in the last, we've been married 22 years, and we probably have never played as much tennis as we do right now.
I've recently discovered a little spot near the Dragon Run Swamp, and I've fallen in love with that. As well, I do a lot of cooking outdoors, my barbecue pit that I built. And I'm a deeply religious person, so my regular pattern of prayer has now been increased. So that's how I've been handling.
We bought a water slide for the kids. And so we've just had a lot of fun, like having our own little water park in the backyard and just trying to let them have fun despite everything else that's going on right now. So we've had a good time doing that, and like they've learned to play video games, which is like entertaining. So I've been using my kids as entertainment. You know, sometimes they're frustrating, but you know, a lot of times they're very entertaining. So sometimes they go to their grandma's, and that's like a nice little respite too. But yeah, that and gardening, like my garden looks pretty good this year. It's probably the most time I've gotten to spend in my garden in a long time. So it's another plus to pandemic time.
I've always worked out of my house for even before this, and overworked past the normal hours. So I'm trying to be very cautious about when work starts and ends, and starting before I work, going for a walk, after I work, going for another walk, getting outside. And I live in Williamsburg. There are a lot of great parks, including York Park. And I get outside whenever I can. My husband and I walk together. We bike together. The parkway was open to just bikers and walkers, and boy, did I love that. That was so much fun. And then I started taking Pilates in December. I've had a lot of injuries that I'm trying to recuperate from, and I kept those, I had to delay those sessions for a while, but they started back up again. And I bought a Pilates machine for myself so that I can just, in case this happens again where it closes down, I can keep doing that. And I just try, and I host Zoom meetings with friends, and family to keep in touch with people, because it's hard. It's really hard to be separated from family and friends. And so I've been trying to at least be offer that to my friend.
I do a little bit of everything that you guys said, you know, the exercising and spending time with family. It is a little bit interesting to try and teach 2 5-year-olds and work and not work all hours of the day, you know, trying to maintain that. But one thing that I've started to do, I started it earlier in the quarantine when I was just feeling very overwhelmed with all the negative things. I started a list every time I thought of something that I'm really enjoying about this time, and I'm writing it down. And so at some point I will share it with people. But, you know, just like little things, like I've always had a hummingbird feeder. I'm never home to see the hummingbirds, but now it's like every day I get to see them all the time. And I get to eat all 3 meals with my family every day, you know, just little things like that. Just to try and focus on the positive things, because it can be hard to not be with everyone, you know, and stuck at home. So I think it's important that we all take care of ourselves too, so we can bring education back, you know, in full force whenever we're allowed to. So I just want to thank everybody again for being on the panel. It's very clear from our conversation that flexibility, partnerships, and creative thinking are really key to getting through all of this, but that we're going to make it, and we all see the value in what we're doing, and we just have to keep doing it in a way that will work for now, and hopefully we'll get everyone back outside as soon as possible. And I think it was really great to share these ideas and just to discuss as a community of educators what everyone's doing, because we all learn new ideas from each other all the time. So I'm going to turn it over to Circe, but I just thank you guys again for participating.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone again for taking out the time today to chat. Our panelists' bios, their organization info, and some resources that they've mentioned will be found on the asynchronous platform, which is linked alongside this video on the Chesapeake Bay near Virginia website. And we invite everyone to join the conversation by posting their comments and sharing their experiences and resources so that other members of the coastal community can see what you've been up to and be inspired and learn from the resources that have been inspiring you. Do keep in mind that there are other panel recordings that will also be available on the website for your perusal. And it's been a pleasure and an honor, and I hope that everyone tunes in to the next COVID on the Coast conversation.